That gratitude guy, David George Brooke, has been a speaker, coach, and best-selling author for over 25 years. He is a former Nordstrom store manager and has managed in the corporate world for over 30 years. His published works include The Gratitude Guy's Daily Gratitude Journal, Monday Morning Minutes, 6-Word Lessons to Embrace Gratitude, and a number of other books on the topic. As a result of his passion for illustrating the wonders of a gratitude mindset, he has presented over 850 speeches and workshops in the past 9 years. He was recently featured in Forbes and in one of the highest circulated magazines in the United States, the Costco Connection. He is now considered a leading authority on how you can enhance and improve your life, both professionally and personally, by living a life of gratitude. So join me in welcoming with great gratitude our speaker, David. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Patricia. Thank you, all the Golden Gators. Gosh, sometimes you listen to those introductions and you think, how do I follow that? Holy old cow. Gosh, but it's so nice to be here. I mentioned earlier when I popped on earlier, this is a very interactive, experiential type talk. I don't use PowerPoint. So if you have a piece of paper or a pad of paper and a pen, that'll be handy. And also keep your cell phone handy. I call this neutralizing obstacles through gratitude. And the more you participate, the more you will benefit. So let me start out by saying you and only you choose your attitude. Nobody gets in your brain and rewires your brain and puts the blue wire to the red wire or whatever it might be. You can decide to get out on the left side of your bed or the right side of your bed, the positive, the negative, whatever, but it's a choice and only you can make that choice. You can choose to live an attitude of gratitude. And if you do, you'll be happier, healthier, and lighter. It can make such a big difference. But it does depend on how you look at something. Now, I mentioned, I can't remember who it was. I think it was Tana was in Vancouver. I'm in Seattle. And so years ago, I was running a foot race across the floating bridge. And it went from Bellevue on the east side over to Husky Stadium. It was a 10K race. And I'm 2/3 of the way through and I'm just pumping away, running. Little kids are passing me and I'm not doing very well. And I look in front of me and there's quite a few people, but I look behind me and there's just thousands of people all the way up into Bellevue, up over there used to be a toll plaza there and so forth. And I turned back around and I thought, here's what's interesting. If these people in front of me weren't here, I would be in first place. I mean, what if they all had the bad toe or the bad foot or something they couldn't work or had to have some surgery done? And a couple of people talked about surgery. So it depends on how you look at something. So it's so important. So think about the pandemic. Gosh, we went through the pandemic. I switched over, as most of us did, to Zoom and doing virtual presentations and so forth. But there was a lot of sadness. There's no question about it. People passed away. It was very difficult, to say the very least. But how about some of the silver linings? It made us reprioritize our whole lives and how we looked at things. It kind of brought the whole world together. The technology, this Zoom thing just drives me crazy. It's so phenomenal. We could be just a foot away, and yet we're in San Francisco. There's all parts of the country. I heard where people said they were from, and yet it feels like I've gotten my coffee, they've got their coffee. We might as well be at Starbucks. It's that cool. And think about some of the efficiencies. I have a friend that does my videos, and he comes and films when I'm down in Las Vegas and places like that. And I drive an hour to see him, have coffee with an hour, and then drive back an hour. Now, forget that. We meet on Zoom for an hour, have our coffees, talk, and I've saved 2 hours. So some of the efficiencies. How about Amazon Fresh? Knock, 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 knock. There's 3 bags of groceries. I never have to leave the condo. I don't have to go get in the shopping cart, the whole deal. So there's so many things that are efficient. But again, it does depend so much on how you look at something. So let's start with the first exercise. Here's what I like you to do. On a piece of paper, pad of paper, whatever you got in your pen, I want you to write on that piece of paper 2 words. You are, Y-O-U-A-R-E. Somewhere at the top, you are. And I'm going to give you about 30 seconds. And here's what I want you to do. For the next 30 seconds, I want you to be your biggest cheerleader. Now, I wrote down some of the things people talked they were grateful for: parents, sobriety, wife, meeting, laughing, flowers, waking up, and so forth. A lot of wives and husbands parents, grandparents, and so forth. So whoever is your biggest cheerleader, I want you to be them for the next 30 seconds. And I want you to write down everything they would say to describe you. You are talented. You are loving. You are funny. Whatever they would say, 30 seconds, write as many things as you can in 30 seconds, go. Okay, there's 30 seconds. Now, it took you 30 seconds to write down. Hopefully, you wrote 6 or 8 or 10 characteristics, whatever you could write in that period of time. But just reread them really fast again and plant them in your brain. This is how they see you. You're funny, you're talented, you're loving, you're unbelievably friendly, whatever it might be. Plant those in your brain. And by a high five to the screen or a thumbs up, how many people feel better after they read that list? Give me a thumbs up to the screen, a high five, whatever.
That was easy.
Yes, that was easy, because that's what having a gratitude attitude will do for you. And I heard somebody say, who was, I'm trying to keep track of it, said, well, I was working on my faults. I had a guy come up to me, he says, your little exercise about how we look at ourselves, you are. He goes, how come you don't have people describe their shortcomings? What is this, Dave's negative hour? Who's going to describe your shortcomings? Look at how somebody sees you. Having an attitude of gratitude will do that for you every single day. I have a little gratitude tip. If you have some little 3x5 card or something, write those down on a 3x5 card or a piece of paper. Put it on your refrigerator, your bulletin board, your makeup mirror, your mirror in the bathroom, whatever it might be, because you look at those, it'll definitely put you in a little better frame of mind. So number one. Number two, you're known by the company you keep. Gosh, I think this is so important to think about. They say one bad apple spoils the whole bunch. So think about who you're hanging out with. I worked at the University Bookstore years ago when I was going to the University of Washington here in Seattle. And this guy, my manager, had a little sign up in the office, and it was neatly lettered, like from some sign company. And I read it, and I'm about 18 or 19. I think that's the dumbest sign I've ever seen. And it wasn't until years later that I went, wow, that actually made a lot of sense. And the sign said, you meet respectable people where respectable people gather. If you're looking for mountain trout, don't go fishing in a herring barrel. God, that makes perfect sense. And so think about who you're hanging out with. You want to get better at tennis, play with a better tennis player. But it's so important. And it's just interesting. My own father, a lot of people talked about back to everything that people were grateful for: mother, my son, health, family, daughters, husband, wife, mother, wife. A lot of the things that people were grateful for are connected with your family. My own father, unfortunately, took his own life. He was very negative. And one day I was having coffee with him. I was probably 25 when he died, but I think in my early 20s. Or I'm having coffee with him. He's just complaining about everything. And I said, Dad, he was actually a fairly successful attorney. And he says, I said, why do you complain? All you do is complain. And he says, did it ever occur to you, I just might like to complain? And I thought about it and took another sip of coffee, and I came back and I said, well, did it ever occur to you, I may not want to hang out with you then? I mean, who wants to be around a person that's complaining all the time? I mean, I live in Seattle where it rains a lot, but man, when it's sunny, I always know that above those clouds, there's some sun. So it just depends on how you're going to look at it. It makes such a big difference. So association evaluator. Here's something I recommend you do once or twice a year, at least once a year and maybe twice a year, is reevaluate your associations and think about who you're hanging out with. The first thing, number one, 0, 1, or 2 people you should disassociate with. Think about these people. They're not good for you. They bring you down. They're negative. Unfortunately, like my father, that kind of thing. Could be 0, but it could be 1 or 2. Think about that. Number 2, 0, 1, or 2 people you should limit your association with. Now, that might be a coworker or a family friend or family or something like that you're not going to be able to get away from, but at least you can limit what you do with that person. And then the third one is my favorite, 0, 1, or 2 people you want to enhance your association with. And what I use is my litmus test of this, like where Starbucks is from Seattle, all these places, Amazon and Microsoft, all these places are from Seattle. Starbucks, I have one 2 blocks from me. So you go to Starbucks with that person and you have coffee. And the first person you should disassociate with, you have coffee with them for an hour. The whole hour drags. You go out to your car and you think, that is an hour I'll never get back again. That hour is completely shot. It's gone. It's wasted. It's the way it is. Number two person, you go there, you have coffee with them, and you can kind of take it or leave it. It feels like maybe 20 or 30 minutes, an hour or so or whatever. But again, my favorite is the enhanced person. You go have coffee with them, you sit with them for an hour, you go to your car, and guess what? It feels like you were gone 10 minutes. So very important to think about that. Those people that you're having so engaged into the conversation. So think about people like that can really help you and bring you up versus bring you down, if you will. So harnessing gratitude's power. Years ago, I learned how to fly. And I had an instructor named Jay Diddy, and we went through, it took me about a year to learn how to fly. And he said, I'm going to tell you today, now this is way before the gratitude guy and anything else I had done. He says, I'm going to tell you today, you're going to be grateful that you paid attention to me today. And I'm, oh, okay. And it really kind of shocked me. He said it a couple more times. So today's lesson, we're going to talk about instrument flight rules, and we're going to go up there and we're going to get into the clouds, and I'm going to tell you how this works. So pay attention. You're going to be grateful that you listened to me. So sure enough, I listened to him and he told me some of the things. Always pay attention to your instruments. Do not follow your head or your heart or your stomach, because they'll lie to you and they'll tell you something different, but the instruments never lie. So about 6 months later, I'm flying along and I have 3 friends of mine, and we get into the clouds, and all of a sudden I get disoriented. It's called spatial disorientation. And the plane starts turning like this to the right. And you know what happens when it starts going like this? If you don't correct it, it's going to be over all the way, and that's going to be trouble. And so I turned on the heading bug because I was definitely disoriented. My stomach said I was straight and level, and I was turning over to almost go upside down. The plane straightened back around like this. I'm flying straight and level, and I thought I was upside down. I had the worst case of vertigo, which is that's what happened to John F. Kennedy Jr. and a lot of people. That happens in flying all the time. And I landed and I came back and I said, we're not going to go to lunch where we were going. And to this day, I'm going to find Jay one of these days, because I remember how much he pushed me on that. You're going to be grateful about this. And it made such a big difference because I paid attention to him. And gratitude was, in this case, I think it kind of saved my life in many cases. So next, I want to talk about the science of gratitude. People ask me a lot about, so what's the story on this gratitude thing? Is this woo-woo science? Is this some sort of energy thing, or what is the story? Well, I have some research and some studies that have been done. I want to read this to you because this really makes it clear. This is not just some woo-woo thing that this gratitude guy is talking about, or anybody else is talking about gratitude. It says this: appreciating what we have measurably improves our relationships, our life satisfaction, our health, our sleep, and it improves our physical health, leading to fewer aches and pains, lower blood pressure, and less depression. Grateful people are more likely to take care of their health, exercise more often, and schedule regular checkups. Gratitude reduces toxic emotions like envy, resentment, frustration, anger, and aggression, and enhances positive emotions like empathy, caring, and sympathy. Too much of our time is spent pursuing things we currently don't have. Boy, is that ever true. Gratitude reverses that and realigns our priorities to appreciate what we currently have. Happiness is rarely constant, so although happiness is a fantastic goal, gratitude for the tools that get you there are more important. How easily we can lose sight of everything we have to be thankful for when the circumstances of life become unpleasant. So think about COVID when we went through that. And lastly, we are our own worst critics, and we hold ourselves to impossible standards, and we continually compare ourselves to others. Boy, if that isn't like a cat chasing its tail, do not compare yourself to anybody else. It's called comparisonitis. And it's a bad disease, and only focus on the only person you should be comparing yourself to is who you were yesterday, and make yourself a better version of that person today. Listening to all these stories and these introductions, they're like, well, I haven't done this. I haven't traveled here. And you got to catch yourself, and you got to nip it in the bud and go, look, if I want to go to Greece, I'll go to Greece. If I want to go to Africa, I'll go to Africa. But don't compare yourself. Use it to incentivize you, but don't make it something that, oh gosh, I wish I didn't have this. And it makes such a big difference. So very important. All right, next. Gratitude journal. This is the centerpiece of everything that I talk about. Now, I have called that, I put a link in the chat, by the way, That Gratitude Guy's Daily Gratitude Journal. But I'll also add, before I get into it, Here's a spiral notebook. You can do that too if you want. You don't have to buy the gratitude, guys. I heard, who was it? I think Tony said he had a gratitude journal, if I'm not mistaken. And you can get a spiral and take it and do it like this. But the nice thing about this gratitude journal, by the way, show of hands, how many people have heard of a gratitude journal? Show of hands. Well, of course, this is the Golden Gate Breakfast Club. Patricia, I'm so impressed with all these people today. I do a lot of talks, and it's just fun to hear the bios of things. Oh, look at that. Tony has his gratitude journal too. So on this gratitude journal, there's a template that you'd use, and it says gratitude today. It says the day and the date, and then it says a little thing here, the daily number. There's 2 lines for current events and special occasions, so you don't have to have a diary. Then there's 4 or 5 lines asked, what are you grateful for? And I heard some phenomenal things. I wrote down all those things. One guy said San Francisco, my job, grandkids, adoptive parents. There were so many great answers there. And then there's 2 lines down here, and that is, what is the highlight of your day, which we'll get to in a second. And there's also a little thing up here that says daily number, which we'll talk about in a second. But on the right-hand side, it's gratitude for tomorrow. And those are your gratitude intentions. And that's where you write where you're grateful for something that hasn't even happened yet. And I remember when I first started out in speaking, I would write on the right-hand side, I'm grateful to speak to 100 people. And then I spoke to 100, and then 500, and 1,000. And then I spoke to 10,000 soldiers at Joint Base Lewis McChord, our military base up here, and so forth. And now I have a couple of YouTube videos that have like 100,000, 200,000 views on them and things like that. So very, very helpful. So it's very, very important to write it down. And by the way, in the second or third page, I understand where everything is typed now, and I can say things in here, send Patricia a note of thanks, it'll type it. I mean, there's all these things you can do, but there's something about this little instrument called a pen and this thing called a book that makes such a difference in planting it in your brain. And on the second or third page of this gratitude journal, it says, if you think about it, it's like a dream. If you talk about it, it inspires you. But if you write about it, it empowers you. And you can bet tomorrow when I talk about the highlight of my day, because I already wrote in it this morning, I was writing it first thing in the morning, there'll be the Golden Gate Breakfast Club will be one of the highlights of my day. And especially, look at those claps. TK, thank you for that, for the clapping there. I appreciate that. And so it's that important. So let's get to the next exercise, back to your pad of paper. So what we're going to do on this one now is I want you to, and this is sometimes when I'm in person, I have people pair up and they do things, but this is a very individual exercise. This is for you, and you're all pretty much individual anyway, because we're on Zoom. But what I want you to do is I want you to start out with what I call your daily number. So what is your daily number? Your daily number is you're assigning yourself a value from 1 to 10. 10 is the best. 1 is the worst, and you can do halves. So say you're having a great day, you're a 7.5, 8, 8.5. Put that down and put a circle around it. Maybe you're having a phenomenal day. Maybe you're a 9. If you're having a tough day, it's a 4 or 5 or whatever, you put it down. You're not going to share it with anybody, but I want you to write that number down and put a circle around it. All right, and then you've got that number down. That's kind of taking your temperature, as you will. And then I want you to write 1, 2, 3. You're going to write 3 things underneath it. All right, number 1. And of course, we heard this on the list, and I wrote all these down. There are so many good things: daughters, husband, grateful, health, water, Africa, waking up, flowers. So many great answers. What's the number 1 thing you're grateful for if you could only pick one thing? Now, people had multiple answers, which is great, but just put one. Number 1 is, if you only could pick one, put that down at number 1. And then hint number 2 is going to be the second thing you're most grateful for. So if you have, some people said their wife and then their grandchildren, whatever, put that down at number 1 and put whatever it is at number 2. All right. And then this one, I'm going to give you about 30 seconds on number 3. I want you to think about, so it's 8:16 Pacific Standard, Pacific Daylight Time. So it's early in the day here. I'm going to give you 30 seconds for this to think about what was the highlight of your day yesterday. What was the best thing that happened to you yesterday? And write that down at number 3. And you might need to think about it a little bit, so I'll give you about 30 seconds. Okay. So now I want you, like you did before, I want you to reread number 1, number 2, and number 3. And as I say, really plan them in your brain. Really think about them. Don't just gloss over them. You wrote them down, but really think about them, about what a difference they make. And after you read those 3 things, I want you to write down another daily number. It could have been the same number or it could have changed. But whatever that is, write down another daily number and put a circle around it. Okay, and being the very participatory Golden Gate Breakfast Club that you are, by a thumbs up, how many people's number from the top to the bottom went up? Give me a thumbs up or a high five if it went up after writing that down. Once again.
That was easy.
Once again, that was easy because it's the Golden Gate Breakfast Club. I'm telling you, they all say, only say nice things, which my mother said, if you don't have something nice to say, don't say it. I tend to be really enthusiastic. I really enjoy gratitude. I love telling everybody how gratitude can make such a big difference. But I can look at Zoom things. How many people's numbers went up? And this is what you see. I just go, really? None of you? None of you went up at all? Holy old cow. Am I not doing the exercise right? How can this be? So it's so important, but it makes such a big difference. But that's what a gratitude journal can do for you. And as I say, the gratitude intentions, the one on the right side is nice when you can take some time and talk about what you're grateful for. I heard people talking about some plans coming up and so forth, and write those in that they're so grateful for the things that hasn't happened yet. And it can pre-program your prefrontal cortex is where your subconscious mind is. It can pre-program your subconscious mind to direct you towards that goal, because the subconscious mind does not always understand the difference what it thinks has happened and what has actually happened. So, all right, next. I want to talk about, let me finish, by the way. One of the things I think is interesting about having the gratitude journal, if you will, is that people would come up to me at the book table after I'm done and they want to buy gratitude journals, and we get your picture, can we do it and take it, and so on and so forth. And this guy comes up, and it was similar, and he says, is this your, he's going to buy some gratitude journals, and he goes, is this your gratitude journal, your own personal one? I go, well, of course I write on my own. Mind if I look through it? And I said, well, yeah, don't look at it too closely, but you can look. So he kind of thumbs through it, and he goes, wow, you write in this every day. Were you in the room? Were you just in the conference room, or were you in another thing on taxes or something that you weren't paying attention? Of course I write in it every day. And it's funny because I have these, yesterday I had breakfast with these fraternity brothers that we all went to the University of Washington. And I used to call myself the Brooker, and I kind of changed it to that gratitude guy, but that was my nickname. And my friends would always call me, I need a dose of the Brooker. Apparently I'm a little more energetic or enthusiastic or inspirational or whatever it might be, or motivated than they were. So I need a dose of the Brooker. So now they call me and they go, hey, Dave, I need a dose of the Brooker. And I go, wait a sec, hold a sec before you go any further. I said, let me ask you one thing. Have you written in your gratitude journal yet? And they go, no. So if they hit no, I just hit off, and I just hit, and the phone just goes off. And about 3 seconds later, they call back. I think we got cut off. No, we didn't. No, we didn't. I hung up on you. Write in your gratitude journal. I'll be your training wheels when I'm not going to pedal your bike, for gosh sakes. You got to do something. I think the good Lord gives you a toolkit, but I think you have to buy the house, for crying out loud. So there's some responsibility there. So it makes such a big difference. But anyway, then one thing I want to talk about, and I'm going to wrap up in about 5 or 6 minutes, is that I think it's so important. I call this the 4-part step version of how you figure out what your purpose is. The first thing is find yourself. The second thing is find your talent. The third thing is find your passion. And the fourth thing is find your purpose. And so let's start with yourself. It's so important. That relationship you have with yourself is so important. I contend, outside of maybe your faith, it's the most important relationship you ever have. And how do you reinforce that? One of the things, no matter what mood I'm in the morning, I'm always in a better mood when I write in this gratitude journal, when I'm focusing on all those. And here's my list of all the things everybody said this morning, which was really great, that they were grateful for. Many people went into 3 and 4 things, which was really cool. So very important. And I think that how you can reinforce that relationship, get your sleep, drink your water, get your exercise, all those things, take your supplements, whatever it might be, do stretching, do meditation, do your gratitude journal, all will lead to a better relationship with yourself. Number 2, Find your talent. What are you good at? You know, if a little guy's like 5'1" and 150 pounds, he's not going to be an NFL quarterback, but maybe he can be a jockey or something. And something I feel very strongly about: make your talents, make your talents, make your strengths productive, make your weaknesses irrelevant. Do not worry about your weaknesses. If I can go out and I can speak to 10,000 soldiers and do all these things, but I can't draw a circle. So I'm not going to take an art class. So think about what your strengths are and make them really productive as you will. And then figure out what you're passionate about. What did you want to do when you grew up? What would you do if you didn't get paid any money? What was one of the things you were always going to do, but you never got around to it? That famous line. So if you have a great relationship with yourself, if you find out what your talent is, you figure out what you're passionate about, you're probably going to find your purpose. You'll probably figure that out. And that's where I got my purpose about 10 years ago. I had a long career managing stores for Nordstrom and Lowe's and kind of in the big box thing. But I always wanted to be a speaker since I was 19 years old. And it took me 55 years or 45 years, whatever it was, to actually get the guts to go out and do it. Then I never looked back. And I get told all the time, you changed my life. It's the most thrilling thing. And I know there's many, if not all, speakers here. You know what that's like. It's incredible when somebody tells you how much you changed their life or their perspective just from having your presentation and so forth. So very important. And by the way, one little thing on, before I get into the final little thing I'm going to do, that talks about the relationship you have with yourself. So here's a $20 bill. So there's Andrew Jackson is on this $20 bill. So if I handed it through the camera, I think most people would take the $20 bill. No strings attached. I'm just giving it to you. But if I do this, Patricia, if I do this and crunch it, I think most people would take it again. And I think if I put it on the ground, stomped on it and crushed it and beat it up and then spread it out, I think, again, most people would take it. But I look at Andrew Jackson, I say, Andrew Jackson, you're a piece of baloney. You're worthless. I don't think you're worth 2 cents. And I didn't even see why you're on the planet. Andrew Jackson will look back at me and he'll go, well, listen, Mr. Speaker Man, you can say whatever you want about me, but I'm still worth $20. And he would be right. So why do you let somebody crush you, step on you, tell you you're worthless, or devalue you from $20 to 15 to 10 to 5 to the worst, 0, and let them get away with it? You want to know how to prevent that? Get grateful. Focus on everything you have in your life, your blessings and abundance, because gratitude turns what you have into enough, and it'll make such a big difference. So keep that in mind. Okay, last thing we're going to do, grab your smartphones. And this is what I call this. I call this the 4 T's: telephone, text, tweet, or tell. And I think today we're going to use text. And Patricia, that's why I mentioned, if you have your phone, you can write a note, which is tell somebody, but it's sort of fun to text people. And here's what I want you to do. So I'm going to give you, let's go with 60 seconds. I'm going to give you 60 seconds. And on your smartphone, on your cell phone, I want you to text somebody in your life and tell them how grateful you are to have them in your life. And please use the word grateful. And make sure you can, if you can do a couple of texts or whatever, but whoever it might be, somebody that you really appreciate, and please use the word grateful. 60 seconds, text as many as you can, go. Okay, and there's a minute. So hopefully you knocked out a couple of texts. Actually, when I'm in the junior high schools and high schools, they've already done about 6 or 7 texts. Their little fingers are flying so fast on that phone, I can't get over it. And then in the senior centers, it's like, here, let me help you out and let's get that text out here and so forth. And oh, and by the way, before I wrap up, I did put in the chat a link for my gratitude journal. I also have a YouTube channel and a couple other things that might be of interest. So those are in the chat. But it's interesting because to me, I do miss being back live. I'd say half my talks now are live. So it's coming back post-pandemic. But the reason, one of the things I miss is you see people in person naturally, and they'd come up to the book table afterwards and they'd show me their phone. Look at my message. And I go, here's the message from the text, which we just did. And it says, I'm grateful for you too. What do you want? You're missing the whole idea. Another one they showed him, it said, are you sure you sent this to the right person? And then down in Vegas, which maybe this is sad, I almost hesitate to say this, the person said, I'm okay. Are you okay? Is there an active shooter in the hotel? And I went, oh my Lord, what world we're coming to now. But one I'll never forget is it was a performing arts center in Bothell in Seattle, and it says text, tweet, tell, or telephone. So she was actually telephoning. She was in the front row over to the right, and I could hear her from the podium. And she goes, hi, honey. I just want to let you know that I just really appreciate you. I'm assuming is her husband. And I'm so grateful for you and everything you've done for me. And I'm really, really grateful for you. I don't know. Some speaker just told me to call you and tell you. No, you're missing the point. It's got to be from you. So it makes such a big difference. All of this list, I made a list of everything that somebody wrote down or said today, which is so powerful. I'm so pleased you all focused on that. That was the theme of the day. Gratitude can change your life. I'll say it for the second time. Gratitude turns what you haven't to enough. It changed my life. It transformed my life. And in some ways, it even saved my life. It can do the same for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I am very grateful that we have so many great speakers who are willing to talk to us for nothing. Yeah, but enthusiastic appreciation. So now we get to the point of the program.
And your question
question is good. So thank you. That was lots of fun. And it is nice to focus on what we appreciate of ourselves are not our faults, which perhaps we have a couple. Do I see a first question, or do I take it myself?
Absolutely outstanding presentation. One question I have that occurred several times is, have you ever thought about decaf? The real question is, I love the last quote that you used, but I don't think I wrote it down accurately. Gratitude changes what you have to enough.
Good question, Tim. Gratitude turns what you have into enough.
What you have into enough. Okay.
Yeah, and I use that word comparisonitis because we all do it. I do it. Everybody does it. And you try to monitor it is because you hear somebody, well, I just got back from a round the world tour. I've been gone for 2 years. And I go, well, I've never been around the world. And you just can't do that. So that's why I love the gratitude turns what you have into enough. And I do something else, and I'll mention it real quickly. I'm looking at it right there. This is in my workshops. I have people do the most memorable events of their life. And then I have them do top 25, 50, or 100. For me, at my age, mid 70s, I have 100. And every day every so often I'm having a bad day. I start looking at all those things I've done, and I just shake my head like, you have done so much. And so it's so helpful to keep it focused on what you have, your blessings in abundance, and not somebody else.
One quick question while other people are forming theirs. You mentioned that you were store manager of Nordstrom's.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it's my favorite store on planet Earth. It is always a positive customer experience. The culture is amazing. But there's this myth or this story that has gone around for years that Nordstrom will take back anything. Did they really take back 4 tires?
Yeah, it is actually true, Tim, and it is more than urban myth. What it was is because I was with them for 15 years, and actually I managed I was a buyer for the stores before I became a store manager up in Fairbanks in Alaska. In Fairbanks was a tire store that they closed, and they put a Nordstrom in its place. And so then somebody came back a year, it's coming back to the same store. Wait a minute, here's the tires. And so they actually did give them money back for the tires, and then they end up buying some clothes or something like that. But it's because it had been a tire store before in Fairbanks, Alaska. Yeah, so there's some truth to that.
Well, But thank you
Well,
very much.
that-
And I'd love to hear more about
Yeah.
the culture of Nordstrom's and how it was built, because it's phenomenal.
It's phenomenal. You're absolutely right. Absolutely right.
So I love that question, Tim, because of course we hear it and we're not quite sure if it really is true. Now, I was talking to David a couple of days ago, and he used to be a member of the Seattle chapter, of which I'm encouraging him, and we have so many NSA past presidents here, including Tim Durkin, and the next person who wants to ask a question is a past president of a couple of NSA chapters and also international liaison with all around the world, Janelle Barlow, best-selling author of A Complaint is a Gift. Just so you know, we have heavyweights asking you questions, David.
Well, and I want to go to Janelle's house too. That's something maybe I could work something out.
No.
Okay. Thank you for that. Since I heard that you were going to be speaking, my brain has been unable to let go of being grateful for things. It's really just hearing that you were going to speak just opened up my mind in a way that was wonderful, and I thank you for that. My question is this. I mean, I know that Nordstrom is pretty much just a great place to work, and it's their culture that contributes to that, and then that passes over to the customers. My question is, I do a lot of work with call centers that handle complaints. And it's not a real positive culture in most companies. And my question is, what advice do you give to those companies that have to deal with, they're putting these people in for 8 hours a day, listening to some pretty awful customers? What advice, how do you use gratitude to get around that? What can the manager do?
Well, that's a great question, Janelle. And I think that I'm thinking that Nordstrom, and I don't think they've changed this, but one of the things that they did, and I'm not sure how it would necessarily relate to a call center, but one of the things they got across to us, no matter what level you were, store manager, I started selling suits. Everybody starts on the floor and works their way up. And I went through all the different departments and buyer and so forth, became store manager. But they always said to you, you can do whatever it takes to take care of a customer. And what the thing that, and again, I'm not sure this would translate as well to a call center, but what they would say is to somebody like, well, this thing broke. Well, we'll give you another one. And so then how about if we give you another one plus ABC? And then they'd say, is the customer happy? That's all we care about, is the customer happy. And so, but then they would afterwards, you'd say, oh, I gave him 5 and they only bought 1. Oh, that's okay. Is the customer happy? And then I'd say yes. And they'd say, okay, but next time you don't have to do 5. You can just do 2 or 3 or do 1 or something. But I think a lot of it is, and probably more, not as much from Nordstrom, but more from what I've learned from coaching people. The biggest thing that ever got across to me is if people, and again, I'm thinking about call center people to your question, is just letting the people vent. Because people, and it's like somebody once said to me, they get more and more irritated. I'm going to call, it's like this blowing up this huge balloon. And the balloon gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And so if all of a sudden they go, okay, yes, can I help you? And they go, yes, I have a problem. And if somebody says, we'll give you your money back, it's like popping the balloon. You got to let the air back out the same way it came in. Well, tell me more about, tell me what, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. What happened? Well, tell me more. And then the balloon slowly comes down back to normal. And the person says, and I think about handling this so many times because people come up to me, are you the store manager? And I knew it was always a complaint. And so many times, I'd say half the times people say, I feel so much better now, just by listening and letting them tell their story. That seems to be really powerful.
Yeah, and I think also the call center manager has an awful lot to do with this, yes, because they many times attack their call center staff. I mean, and then you expect them to go out and be nice to the customers. It's just, and it seems so obvious. And maybe what they need is you to speak to them about gratitude that they've got that job.
It would help. I think it would help. So.
Yes.
All right, good. We have Susan Rowan, Carl Walsh, and then Tracy Hooper. All speakers, may I add, David. All active members of NSA, may I add. Okay.
Susan. And isn't Patricia good at guilt trips, folks?
Yeah, so true.
My mother would be proud. This was wonderful.
Thank you.
Um,
Susan.
and because gratitude has to be imbued from within, but for those that it isn't, writing it down is wonderful. But I want to give some credit to things I learned from Patricia and very aligned with what you said. She said to us, and this had to be 35 years ago, don't compare yourself to the exceptions.
Well, I
So
like
if I sold 100,000 books, I was comparing myself to Tom Peters, who sold blah, blah, blah. And that was just so important because it goes to what you have is enough, because the people who don't think they have enough will never be grateful for what they have.
that's true.
And so I thought that, and I really quite enjoyed this. And I am a big believer in the alliteration. So I just want to tell you, and I don't know if this is a question, I love the 4 T's.
Oh, good. Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite things. And it's when you do it again, Zoom, we've all adapted to the virtual stage, if you will. But in person, people are laughing out there because they're showing their phones to people and things like that. And it's really, really fun. And it's that's just become such a fun exercise for everybody.
Well,
Not to
one of
mention
the,
alliteration.
yes, and one things when I spoke to some university students, I told them, take out your phones. And they thought, I said, turn them on. And then I said, and call your mother. She doesn't want to text. And the
Good
grateful people on the other end were their mothers and fathers,
Exactly.
not them.
Exactly.
Anyway, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you so much.
All right, Carl Walsh.
Yes. First of all, back in the 80s, I worked with a company where we, in the store operations department, where we studied Nordstrom as our customer service model. And I took that when I went to Disney and I created a global call center for Disney. I continued that mental association with Nordstrom. So I just want you to know that that was a big deal for me and for the people I worked with.
Nice.
Now, my question for you is, if being grateful turns what you have into enough, is there any danger of that blunting the progress forward? Can it lead to complacency?
Yeah, that's a good question, Carl. I don't think so, because I think once you're motivated, once you're inspired, once you're driven, any of those things, type A personality, all those type of terms we give people, I think it's kind of in your blood forever. I wasn't going to mention it, but I'm going to mention it now. I have a really nice condominium in Seattle, and I look out on Lake Washington, and it's a beautiful view and beautiful condo, 2-bedroom. This is my office. I have my printers, my monitors and everything in here. Well, I had a huge flood on January 17th, and at 11 at night, there's pounding on the door, and I thought it was the police, and I thought I must have done something wrong. So it was bam, 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 and I went, oh my Lord, I'm in trouble. And I come out, and there's like 3 inches of water in my condo, and it's the firemen, and there's been a sprinkler break. And anyway, long story short, so I'm using my office, my bedroom, and part of my kitchen. Everything else is covered in plastic, and I don't care. They're going to fix it. The HOA is going to take care of it. And, I don't have to pay for it. And yeah, it's a hassle, but I can't imagine this office. I could put the camera in here and show you, but it's like this is my nerve center. And so it still comes back to how you look at something. So I think once you're positive, I think you're going to be positive, but I don't think that ever changes by having bad stuff happen to you. Back to that great line about there must be a pony in here somewhere. I think there's just certain people that just have that attitude. So, but that's a very good question. I'm gonna remember that and think about that a bit, because I can see how somebody might think that blunts that effect. So thank you. That's a great question.
Well,
Thank you.
Gordon Hill will remember, and probably Janelle, one of our earlier great legends. Now it isn't that funny. I thought of his name, Larry Wilson. That's it. Larry Wilson. And he used to say, you look at all this, when you look back, this is only going to be a mild inconvenience.
I like that.
You look at the tapestry of life, a mild inconvenience. inconvenience. And that's how I look at everything. A mild inconvenience. Tracy Hooper, then Janice Litvin. Also David, both speakers then. Steve Shane, are you trying to get my attention or change your Zoom? Anyway, Tracy and then Janice.
Thank you. David, wonderful. We appreciate your contributions today. I would love you to give the quote again for us that you read on the sign at UW. We meet respectable people, or
right. You meet respectable people where respectable people gather.
Great, thank you. And then I have a thought
but
for
hold
you.
on, you have to hear the rest.
Oh yeah, thank you.
If you're looking to find mountain trout, don't go fishing in a herring barrel. That's the part that makes me laugh. I get the respectable people, but gosh, I think I've been fishing in a herring barrel sometimes. No wonder I never got any mountain trout.
Thank you for that. Also, I want to run this by you. Years ago, I was going through a medical issue, and a friend sent me a quote that said, "Be thankful in tough times, not be thankful for tough times, but be thankful in tough times." And the suggestion was, if you need to worry, don't worry. But if you need to worry, give yourself a certain amount of time and the same time every day to do that. So I decided from 2 to 2:15, that was going to be my worry time. And then if I missed it, oh my gosh, it's 2:20. I missed it. I couldn't work until the next day.
That's good. That's good. Well, I think it's in that. That's excellent. I love that. And I just think too, the whole thing about negative stuff is that anything, tough times, whatever you want to label it, is how do you appreciate up if you haven't seen down? You have to have a scale of reference, you know? And so I've been through some really tough times, and it made me appreciate the up times all the more. So in fact, I'll tell you a real quick one. My wife unfortunately passed away when my sons were 4 and 14, and my mom had died. My dad took his own life. So I had some things that really were challenging throughout my life, but you know, you just face it, and gratitude really helped me. But even though my wife, it was so sad that she passed away, and a lot of you talked about children and grandchildren, I have a relationship with my 2 sons, which is the most phenomenal. I'll get emotional talking about it. The most phenomenal relationship I ever have. I don't know if I would have had that if Dana had lived. You know, so you just never know that sometimes the negative thing will produce something on the high side you had no way of knowing ahead of time.
Thank you.
You bet.
Janice Litvin.
David, thank you so much. I have so much to say, but I'm going to condense it. Number one, I loved the exercise. Write down the positive attributes others would say about you. Because when I'm feeling like I don't know what I'm doing, I'm insecure, how am I going to do that speech, or what are they going to think? And then I write down all the times that I was appreciated on stage and that I do know what I'm doing, then I feel much better. But more importantly, in preparation for a talk I'm doing next week about organizational burnout, I interviewed several members of the team. One, similar to what Janelle was talking about, she works in a legal nonprofit call center where people have to take the traumatic events that they need legal help for, and the legal nonprofit does not have enough funds to supply everyone a lawyer. And so the team taking the calls feels so desperate and sad at the end of every day. And she was asking me what she could do. I'm going to send them a link to your gratitude journal.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
I think that would be very helpful for them and to talk about gratitude as a group every week.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. And I do something every morning called a power hour before I even turn on the devices. And it's get up and make my bed, drink my quart of water, try to drink a gallon of water all day long, go do my gratitude journal, my stretching and my meditation, then turn on the devices, make my coffee. But I was listening to, I walk 8 miles a day. It's just so important. I do podcasts, listen to podcasts and books, and the walking is really great, but the podcasts sometimes are even better. But somebody said the other day, I thought this was interesting. We've all heard these 3 words before, but they said, anytime you're in trouble, get more sleep, drink more water, and do more exercise. You know, and so just because we all those times, and I totally get it, Janice, that just there's some times when I go, I'm not very good. What the heck? I mean, it's like,
well, you don't know this, but I'm a Zumba instructor, and 2 people in this room take my class every week, Susan Rowan and Tana Hope.
Excellent. Excellent. Oh, that's cool. That's cool. Excellent. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
You bet.
Well, wonderful. That has been great. Let's see, do we have any other burning questions? Oh, Steve Shane, I can't tell if you're waving at me or want to ask a question or doing something to turn on and off your phone. So do you have a question? You'll have to unmute your phone.
How about that? No,
Yes. Now you turned it off and on again.
now,
All right. You now
when
you can ask your question. Then we have
I want,
Bill and TK.
I wanted to mention that I grew up in Madison Park and went to
Oh, wow.
Garfield High School,
Wow.
where Martin Luther King spoke in 1961.
Right. Right.
And what part of town do you live in?
I now live in Renton, kind of by, I don't know if you know where the Seahawks headquarters are on Lake Washington, but I primarily grew up in Queen Anne.
Okay, great.
That's a nice area.
Queen Anne High School.
Yep. Yes, sir. No longer there, but it was a great high school.
Yeah, I know that. Great.
Thank
Anyway,
you.
that's wanted to mention that.
Thank you.
All right. We have a question from Bill Buchanan, who is not a speaker, but was in with the FBI. And then
I have a couple of
TK, who
questions
is
for
a
him and the
speaker.
FBI that I want to
Okay.
know about, what that's
Right.
like.
Well, what did you
Okay,
do?
over to you, Bill. Yeah.
Good morning, David. Thanks for an excellent presentation.
Thank you,
And
Bill.
I just have to figure out whether you're going to come down here to San Francisco to buy me a cup of coffee. Or do I show up at Starbucks up there?
I'd love to hear about the FBI. That I'll definitely take you up on that.
Yeah, well, I'm just going to say that the last time I was up in your area, a bunch of us crazy guys, retired FBI and that sort of thing, did a 72-mile ocean kayak circumnavigation of the San Juans.
Oh, wow.
Got into a pod of orcas. That was exciting. And then the time before that was when my mountaineering partner and I almost made the top of Rainier.
Wow.
But anyway, once in a while, every once in a while in your life, you have a confluence. I like that.
Yeah.
With somebody who has a positive outlook on life and some useful information that you can pack away with you when you go out the door. That you're no exception here. I really appreciate your approach to life. But anyway, I just want to tell you that the confluence here is that every morning when I get up and I go in the bathroom and freshen up and look in the mirror, I say, I have 80 to 100 billion brain cells. Please, and the deity comes in here, please help me energize as many of those that I need today and direct them in the right positive direction with your help. That's what way I start.
Nice.
So, anyway, every day without exception.
Nice.
Of course, that's after I make my bed. But anyway, what I would like to do is just, and you can probably tell from my background that I'm very, very much an avid outdoorsman and rigorous exercise and that sort of thing. But anyway, I really appreciate your focusing us on, the minutia of achieving gratitude. I'm looking at number 2 here, minimize weaknesses. And I just like to run this past you. When I'm doing something that I want to be good at, whatever it is, mountain biking, bird hunting, mountaineering stuff, and I fall short of my expectations, I start diverting my energy to efforts to achieve a better result. Now, what it's taking lessons in skiing or something like that. So, I'm not arguing with you about minimizing weaknesses, but at some juncture, I will actually focus on my weakness and try to flip it over into a strength. So that's more a comment than a question, but I really appreciate your focusing us on this great quality of, gratitude.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think one of the things, make your strengths productive, make your weaknesses irrelevant. There's a lot of people, I've met some people in my life that are good at everything. But I know what I'm good at. I know what I'm not good at. And I think that's the biggest thing is just really make those things you're good at really flourish and benefit you and others. And sometimes you see people that just don't, I think about it with a musical instrument, they don't have the musical talent, but they keep taking lessons over and over again. I mean, I'm happy they're making an effort, but it's probably never going to happen. Whereas somebody else is musically talented, it hardly even needs a lesson. So I think that's kind of more the thought there. Yeah, but thank you, Bill.
All right, TK.
Thank you so much. David, this was fantastic. I have a quick question to fill in the blanks. When you had find and you said find yourself, find your talent, did you have two other?
Yes,
on the-
find yourself. That's the first one. I think is more
Mhm.
important relationship with you. Number two, find your talent. Number three, find your passion. And what I always use for that, TK, is, again, what would you do when you would take no money, or if you couldn't wait to
Mhm.
get up every morning, or anything that you're really passionate about? And then number four is find your purpose. And they say people that have a purpose live 7 to 10 years longer than people that don't. And so it's so important. I'm looking at a lot of my fraternity brothers and friends, said coffee with them yesterday, that I'm going to work forever. I'm going to work late into my 70s, 80s, 90s, because I love what I do and I don't consider it work, and it gets to change people's lives. But these other ones, they're so boring now. And I've had a lot of friends start to die, and I think they lost their purpose.
Yeah.
And there's not much to do. I mean, how many cups of coffee? I love Starbucks, but how many cups of coffee can you have there? And how many rounds of golf can you play? I mean, nothing against those things, but there's something when people tell you impacted their lives that you just can't replicate.
Oh, yeah. My husband's been in the ER 4 times since January 14th, had heart surgery, and he's driven because he could have passed away several times. So my question for you, starting off with a compliment, I am so grateful for you. The T and K stand for Tracy Catherine. And as a speaker, I've often been called Racy Tracy. And I keep thinking, that's me. And so I'm really curious, as people have given you feedback on your speaking, you excelled at speaking quickly and briskly. And how do you respond to them or think about it?
Well, actually, in some ways, I think it kind of goes back to the make your strengths productive, make your weaknesses irrelevant. We were talking to Bill about that. And I was 19 years old and I went and did a talk at a high school. And I thought, that's what I want to be when I grow up, as a motivational speaker. And it took me 45 years till the age of 63. But I think also I realized that it's funny when you are aware of your talents and it just comes to you. Like every time I learned how to fly, and then I became the pilot, then I bought an airplane. And then I was on a jury once, and then I was the jury foreman. And then at Nordstrom, it took me 4 years to become a store manager. Most people, it took 10 years. I'm always the leader. I'm always the one. We want David to be the speaker. And so it was just something that I naturally felt. It was in my aptitude, if you will. So it was just kind of there. But then again, as I said, I'm not going to take an art class. I can't draw a circle to save your life. So I think it was just, for me, it was just, there was always something about when I did that talk back at this high school, and I walked to the car and I watched everybody looking at me, and the subject was how to be successful. And it was a half hour, and I was 19 going to the University of Washington. And I just remember getting in the car and go, that's what I want to do someday. I want to be a speaker, because it's really cool to impact people's lives. And the biggest thing, and this is why it's even funny on Zoom, a couple of times when Patricia was on and then Susan introduced me, and they kept doing the two. And I want to see all the people. I want to see all the faces and so forth. I have a gratitude mastermind I'm doing later today, which is once a month, and there's usually 70 or 80 people on it. And you can see 7 by 7 is what Zoom will do. And so but the biggest thing is this. This is the biggest thing. All you speakers that are, I think all speakers know, there's nothing like the head shake. The people, then you can see people and their eyes go up, like, and they'll do like this, or they'll wave, or oh, look, there's the flashing thing in the background. It does that sometime. I don't know how that happens, but it's so validating. And so I think it's just really, because I guess, and I hope I'm answering your question, TK, that I've met people I've coached speaking, and it's just not their aptitude. They're just.
But have you always spoken briskly? Because I've spoken so fast and people are like, so slow down, and it's not me.
Yeah, and you know what I tell them, TK? Stay with the tour. That's
I love it. I'm gonna use that. Thank you so much for being here today. And Patricia, Janelle, thank you for inviting me.
All right, well, TK and Frederick, thank you very much for joining us. We hope you'll come back another time, especially perhaps next week, when Gary Walsh is going to give us a great presentation from behind the curtain. business lessons from the stage. Janice Litvin is sending you a heart. Wonderful. I am grateful for all our active members. I am grateful for the board of directors and the past presidents. I'm grateful for my dream team who certainly helped promoting our Golden Gate Breakfast posts on LinkedIn on a Monday. And before we wave goodbye, we'll give you David George Brooke, that gratitude guy, a concluding remark.
Yes, I would say, and before I say the concluding remark, was it don't compare yourself with exceptions?
Yes, in other words, when Janelle and I were some of the earlier presidents of our Golden Gate Breakfast Club, Northern California, and Tom Peters was a big star. And you know, I am one that says you would always go and schmooze and go say hello to everyone at the cocktail party. And people say, well, Tom Peters doesn't that. He turns into, don't compare yourself to exceptions.
Yeah,
We
excellent.
are famous people no one ever heard of. They
Yeah.
would be there whether we were on the program or not. You
Yeah.
have to be easy to work with and nice and gracious to the audience. And it would be, I'm a 47-year member of the National Speakers
Wow.
Association.
Wow.
It is unrealistic for someone in year 2 to think, well, you know, I'll never be like Janelle and write best-selling books. I'll never be like Patricia and do 120 keynotes a year. You know, I will tell you, the founding president of the National Speakers Association, Gordon and I often give each other quotes from Bill Gove. When he was 89 years old, he said, Fripp, last year I made more money than I've ever made in this business.
Wow.
So I am with you. As long as the phone rings and the emails come in, we are not retired. And Gary's nodding, and I know Carl, we're not retired as long as people want to hear from us. So with that, your concluding remark.
Concluding remark would be just to re-emphasize what I said, is really focus on your blessings and abundance and don't worry about your lack or anything else. It's so important. And the whole focus with seeing the glass half full is so true. It's such a better way to live. You live longer. You heard the science of gratitude. But I would say if you heard nothing else, remember gratitude turns what you have into enough, because that alone will guide you very well. Thank you all very much. Great questions too. Thank you for being a great audience.
Thank you. And see you all next week. Thank you.